All right, let's jump right into a really interesting one. Have you ever come across the name Wa-LaWa? It's one of those names where, depending on your interests, you might think you know exactly what it is. But what if I told you that name points to two completely different things? That's the mix-up we're going to unravel today. So what are we talking about here? Is it some cool made-up language from a sci-fi show? Or is it a real, ancient language family with a deep history? The wild part is, it's kind of both, and the fact that they share such a similar name has created a whole lot of confusion online.
And that really gets to the heart of it. We've got one name, but two totally separate stories. So let's untangle this thing. This case of mistaken identity.
So, on one side of the ring, we have a constructed language, an artlang, that was created specifically for the TV show The 100. And on the other side, we have the Wa, or LaWa, language family, a very real group of languages spoken by thousands of people in Southeast Asia. Two things that couldn't be more different, but they're stuck with this one confusing name.
Okay, it's time for the big reveal. Let's put these two side by side so we can finally and clearly see what's what. This is where the mix-up stops.
And here it is, laid out plain and simple. The Wa language family is a natural language, part of the huge Austroasiatic family. It's spoken right now in Myanmar in China by thousands of native speakers. Now the Wa-LaWa kawn, that's a constructed artlang. Its origin is a TV show. It has absolutely no native speakers, and its location? A fictional universe. I mean, you can't get much more different than that.
And here is the absolute kicker. According to the creator of the fictional language, they didn't even know the real Wa languages existed when they were coming up with the name. So that nearly identical name, it's just a massive, and let's be honest, a really confusing coincidence. Okay, now that we've cleared the air, let's set the TV show language aside for a bit, because I want to take a deep dive into what's truly fascinating here, the real Wa language family.
So, let's properly meet the Wa languages. They're part of that big Austroasiatic family I mentioned, and they're spoken primarily by the Wa people. You'll find them in places like the Wa state of Myanmar and across the border in China's Yunnan province. We're talking about a real culture, in a real place, speaking a very real language.
And what's life like for the Wa language today? Well, the Wa people have a long history of autonomy and being pretty isolated, which has actually helped them preserve their culture and language. While there's always pressure from bigger, national languages, Wa is still going strong in its core areas. And here's the fun fact. Their standard written language doesn't use some ancient, unique script. It actually uses a Latin-based alphabet, which was introduced by missionaries.
Now, let's get into the super cool linguistic details. One of the standout features of the Wa languages is this thing with a really long, fancy name, sesquisyllabicity. It sounds intimidating, I know, but the concept behind it is actually pretty amazing. So sesquisyllabic literally just means 1.5 syllables. And honestly, that's the best way to think about it. It describes a word that has this little unstressed minor syllable just kind of tacked on to the front of a main, fully stressed syllable. So it's not quite one syllable, but it's not quite two either. It's somewhere in between.
Here, let me give you an example. The Walpa word for star sounds something like karat. Do you hear that little cuss sound at the very beginning? That's our half syllable. It's super quick, unstressed, and it just sort of hangs on to the main stress part of the word, rot. It's a structure you really don't find in English, and it's a huge part of what gives Walpa its unique sound.
But it doesn't stop with just that 1.5 syllable thing. The sound system, the phonology of Wa, is incredibly rich. For example, it has what's called a register system, which means you can change the meaning of a word just by changing your voice quality, like using a clear voice versus a breathy voice. And when it comes to grammar, it's what linguists call an analytic language. That just means instead of adding endings to words to show tense or plurals, it relies on strict word order, subject, verb, object, and little helper words to build sentences.
So now that we have a feel for just how complex and fascinating the real language is, let's just take one final glance back at its fictional counterpart just to really drive home how different they are.
The bottom line here is really simple. The TV version is an artlang. It's a piece of art, a creative work that lives and breathes only in its fictional world. It has no history, no culture of speakers, and absolutely no connection to the incredible linguistic tapestry of Southeast Asia.
So why did we even go through all this? Does it really matter that we sort this out? Well, yeah, it does. This whole mix-up serves as a perfect lesson in why being clear and getting things right is so important.
One of our sources put it perfectly, calling this whole situation an object lesson in the critical importance of disambiguation. That's a really powerful way of saying that we have to be careful with names, and we always have to check our sources to make sure we know what we're actually talking about. Because at the end of the day, this isn't just about a simple mix-up. This is about understanding the huge difference between a fun pop culture artifact and the living, breathing cultural heritage of thousands of people. A heritage that absolutely deserves to be known and respected for what it is on its own terms.
And that kind of leaves us with a final thought to chew on. This was one coincidence we were able to spot and clear up. But it really makes you wonder, doesn't it? What other real cultures, real languages, and real histories might be out there unintentionally hidden or overshadowed by the names we see and hear every day in the world of fiction? Something to think about.